The meeting is now live, Deputy Mayor.
Thank you very much and welcome. I'm going to call to order the meeting of the Transportation Standing Committee for July 22nd, 2021. I'm Tim Mouth, the Deputy Mayor, and I'll just be filling in briefly until the Chair or Deputy Vice Chair arrive at the meeting. So I'm going to start off, having called it to order, I'm going to start off asking by approval of the minutes for June the 24th, 2021. Do I have someone willing to move them?
Mancini approves the minutes.
All right, thank you, Tony. Is there a seconder?
Kathy Daigle.
A second. Oh,
Thank
sorry.
you. All those.
Sorry, excuse me, Acting Chair Councillor Daigle Gammon, since she's not a member of the committee, she cannot move the motion. So I need a member of the committee to move to second the motion, please.
Councillor Stoddard. Okay, Councillor Stoddard has second. I don't think there are any errors or omissions. If there are, speak now. If not, then I'll call for the vote. All those in favor of the minutes, say aye. Aye. Contrary? All right. Now, the next thing we're going to do is approval of the order of business and approval of any additions and deletions. So, Madam Clerk, have there been any additions recently?
Mr. Chair, there's been no additions to the agenda via the clerk's office.
All right.
Or deletions.
Members of committee, any additions or deletions?
Nope, good.
All right, then I would like a motion that we accept the approval of the order of business.
So moved by Mancini.
Moved by Mancini, seconded by
I'll second.
Councillor Stoddard. Thank you very much. All those in favor, aye. Aye. Any contrary, nay? All right. Business arising out of the minutes, we have none. Any call for any declaration of conflict of interest today? Not seen any. Motions of rescission, we have none. Consideration of deferred business, we have none. Notices of tabled matters, we have none. Correspondence and petitions. Madam Clerk, there was some correspondence.
Yes, Mr. Chair. Correspondence was received for item 12.1.2 and circulated to the Standing Committee, and the clerk's office did not receive any petitions.
All right, thank you very much. Any petitions from clerk or from members of committee? I don't see any. All right, so we're going to move down to 10.3, which is a presentation regarding the proposed changes to bus route 55. So if Andrea is with us, Andrea the clerk, would you invite her to speak to us for, is this up to 10 minutes, I believe?
Yes, Mr. Chair, the presentation is up to 10 minutes. And right. We'll be sharing that presentation shortly.
All right, I will hand that over to you to get the presentation up. And is the presenter with us?
Yes, the presenter is with us. She thought she might have a work conflict, so she's actually submitted her presentation by video, which we will be sharing, but she is available for questions of clarification if required.
All right, then if you would run the video as soon as you're ready, that'd be wonderful. Thank you.
Is there supposed to be audio with this?
Yes, just momentarily. We just one moment. My apologies for the delay. Jill McGillicuddy, who is sharing the presentation, will have the audio running shortly.
Thank you. I think we're all going to be glad to be back in City Hall one of these days.
Yep. Plus, it's easier for you to buy us coffee too, Deputy Mayor. Eventually,
I only buy candy and wine. The next deputy mayor is going to have to really step up and provide dinner.
Mr. Chair, I'm going to try sharing it on my computer to see if that.
Okay. Failing that, maybe we can move on and then come back.
Day, Mr. Chair, councillors, and members of the public. My name is Andrea Speranza. I'm a resident of District 1. My objective today is to convince the decision makers to maintain the 2.1 kilometer Waverley Road section of Bus Route 55 or maintain it while investigating alternative routes. The proposed modification of Route 55 does not increase ridership, it costs more money, does not save time, does not improve safety, and does not meet the moving forward transit plan's objectives. I will present half a dozen slides outlining our opposition to the change of Route 55, specifically focusing on the plan, the community action taken, and a cost to benefit analysis. So the plan was researched in February 2013. 5-year plan was developed. It was endorsed in 2014. It was completed the first quarter of 2015. So therefore the information is 8 or 9 years old. Since then, we've had a bunch of people move out of our community and new ones move into our community, and they have had no participation in this plan whatsoever. This plan is subject to high-level review every 5 years to remain current, so that's 2021. So we're not asking you to mess with the plan, we're keeping with the plan. There's flexibility incorporated in it to amend it. Our community has had growth and it will have future growth. The Montebello to Waverley development and the Conrad's future developments in the area will only further magnify the problem of the turning lanes with this proposed route. Only 73% of 65% of the people were aware and supported this plan. So 73% of 65% is less than 50%. So perhaps that's where some of the problems are coming from. A large group of our people were not aware that we were getting a bus. For example, if I got a flyer for a high school football team and I don't have any kids, then it goes in the garbage. So if we get a bus flyer and we don't have a bus, it goes in the garbage because it doesn't apply to us. Especially, if we haven't had a bus for 20 years, or heck, we haven't even had a bus for ever. So garbage it goes. Also, it's just a lot of people just assumed it was so off the wall suggestion that every other option is better than our turning lane. So they just thought common sense would prevail. So what happened with our citizens? What did we do? So 100 to 150 people were surveyed and we said no. We had 3 different counselors. Our district was rezoned and COVID hit. So this created communication issues and we truly feel we were underrepresented. Many of the residents expressed a concern to transit and counselors directly and in writing multiple times. Approximately 50 community members met with counselors to express our displeasure with this proposed change. We actually had 2 sets of petitions signed. One petition was signed to maintain that 2.1 kilometer route And then we thought we better be more flexible and open-minded. So we'll do a second survey to investigate alternative routes. And over 200 people signed it. Well, 197 signed the first one and 212 the second one. Then a motion was tabled to address our concerns to keep the 2.1 kilometer route, but the extension to the ferry was also added for $50,000. So that motion really didn't match what either one of our petitions requested. A dozen community members spoke against this change at a budget meeting. Now, I think the fact that so many people publicly spoke with less than 24 hours notice and made themselves available for an undisclosed time is a true testament to how strongly people are opposed to this change. And, you know, perhaps we could have spoke better if we would have had a little more notice. But even so, we only lost by one vote, and that was changed at the very last minute. So we know our request isn't unreasonable based on that alone. Our counselor said the moving forward plan is based on a set of 4 principles aimed at making transit a better, more efficient, and attractive service. This bus stop here is the most unattractive bus stop I have ever seen in my entire life. To have 3 in our small little street is going to decrease our property value. 164 people can fit on that bus pad. Our 3 riders can each have their own landing pad. How are the above mentioned principles met with regarding to the bus route 55 change? I will tell you how I think they are not met. Number 1, increased costs. Both the plan and our counselor said there are no anticipated savings. The 3 new bus stops will cost, I'm sure it is the $12,000 because of the size of these bus stops, perhaps even more. Snow removal, as well as in the future, there will require a turning lane or a stoplight or both. The second point is the new route will take more time. There is only a 3.5 kilometer difference combined both ways. The bus has to wait to cross our very busy intersection that's only going to get busier. The bus is going to wait for 2 minutes at the retaining wall. Then there are 3 additional stop signs, more driveways, more mailboxes, a soccer field, and a playground. This bus has to maneuver a windy residential road versus a straight, fast Waverly Road. And then it has to wait at a blind corner to turn out of our subdivision. Transit's rationale for Route 55 change is to increase the proportion of resources allocated towards high ridership services. I challenge Transit to tell us how this is achieved with the proposed Route 55 change. Point number 3, I can tell you, is it is decreasing our ridership, not increasing anything. And if it's decreasing our ridership, it's decreasing the services to our community. So it doesn't increase ridership to Craigburn Drive. It actually eliminates the service to Waverly Road. And it could potentially increase services to other areas, any other direction than our direction. And I'll provide those suggestions in 2 slides. The fourth reason, but yet the most important reason, is this proposed change decreases safety to everyone: Waverly Road residents, Craigburn Road residents, and bus users. The Waverly Road residents don't have a sidewalk, shoulder. It is unsafe to travel except by vehicle on that road. Therefore, you are decreasing their safety. The Craigburn Road residents have to have that additional traffic hazard, and the bus users are going to be put at risk because of the history of accidents, including fatalities. That blue truck accident was less than a month ago at one end where the blind corner is, and the turning corner where the bus is going to enter the subdivision. That is the gray car accident less than a week ago. There has been no safety report, only new driver training that was done on non-peak times. That is equivalent to me doing a safety inspection while teaching someone how to firefight. Completely unrelated tasks. And if it was a safety report, then why weren't the safety concerns addressed? Which there were two. One was the many parked cars in the evenings, and two was the left turning lane. And there are no plans to address these safety concerns. We're not asking council to disrupt their plan. We're asking them to do the greatest good for the greatest number of residents. Some of the options available are maintain the current route, reduce the services rather than eliminate them like you did in Route 415, turn around on Rockland Drive, turn around on Montague near Conrad's entrance, or the very best option is purchase land from Conrad's to create a park and ride. Because this motion does not increase ridership, it costs more money, does not save time, does not improve safety, and therefore does not meet the moving forward transit plan's objectives. We ask that you maintain the 2.1 kilometer Waverley Road section of the bus route 55 or maintain it while investigating alternative routes. We are not asking council to play Jenga with the moving forward plan because clearly this situation is different than any of the other situations in the plan. Thank you. Have a good day.
All right, thank you for submitting that, Ms. Speranza, and Andrea, thank you, Clerk Andrea, for putting that up. I see the Deputy Chair is, Vice Chair, I should say, is back, so I'm going to hand things over to Councillor Kent.
Thank you, Councillor Oathit. My apologies, deepest apologies for being late. Not a very good way to start a meeting, is it, with the Vice Chair being late? But I'm glad to see that I didn't delay any of the activities. So I just want to confirm where we're at. We're at presentations and we're all accounted for, I think. So at this stage, I'd like to open the floor to councillors and members of the committee who would like to, if they have any questions for the presenter. Although we were informed that this presenter was not available, it turns out now she is available, and we'll just confirm that with the clerk, that she may be available on the phone should there be any questions.
Yes, Madam Chair. Andrea Speranza is in the meeting via Zoom, actually. And I would like to remind yourself, Madam Chair, and the members of the Standing Committee that if there are any questions, they should be questions of clarification related to the elements that were within the presentation.
Terrific. Thank you, Andrea. And Councillor Daigle-Gammon, I see that you'd like to speak.
Yes, Madam Chair, thank you. I know that the rule is usually after any committee member speaks, so if I'm the only one there, great. I really want to say thank you to Andrea for the presentation, and just for a matter of clarity, the quotes that have been attributed to me, the information came directly from Halifax Transit. And I might also add for clarification that the very last recommendation, the motion for the purchase of land, is before Regional Council. That motion was accepted and we are investigating that. Thank you.
Thank you. Are there any other councillors who want to ask for clarification? Councillor Stoddart. Oh, you're on mute, Iona.
You know, and then that gets you. Thank you, Madam Chair, and thank you, Andrea, for your presentation. Just a point of clarification. The turnaround that you are speaking of, is that the one at Conrad Brothers or Montague and Waverley?
Just checking in with you, Andrea, to make sure that you are still with us.
Yeah. Hi.
Hi.
Well, good day, everyone. The portion we're discussing is the portion from the corner of Waverley and Charles Keating. towards the overpass and then back again. It's only 2.1 kilometers.
Okay. All right. Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Thank you, Councillor Stoddard. I see no further questions in the chat. Don't see any raised hands. So at this stage, I'd like to thank you as well, Andrea, for taking the time to share your thoughts and do such a lovely presentation. It's nice to see it in such a way. We appreciate that. And at this stage, we're going to carry on with the meeting. So we are into reports. I see that there are no, information items. There were none brought forward. And now we'll move into reports. We have a staff presentation for item 12.1.1 for the 2020-2021 Q4 Halifax Transit KPI. So I understand, Mr. Cutler, you're here to do a presentation for us?
Hi, Madam Chair. Actually, shortly before the meeting, I received an email from Mr. Cutler, and he's not able to attend. So Dave Espeseth, sorry, excuse my my mastering of the pronunciation. Dave will be making the presentation on his behalf.
Okay, thank you. Dave, you're on.
I'm here. I don't have the ability to share my screen. Could that be turned on?
My apologies. Just one moment, please. You should be able to now.
Just to confirm, can you guys see that?
There we are. Yes, we can see it now.
Can you guys hear me okay? Because it's a little choppy.
Actually, yeah, it's a little choppy here. I think maybe if we can make sure everyone has their mics turned off. I'll turn mine off as well, just to be sure. We'll try that again.
And Dave, if you have your camera turned on, it might help to turn the camera off.
Yeah, my camera's off because it was a little choppy.
Your audio is good now.
Is it? Okay. Well, if I'll carry on, and I guess somebody let me know if gets interrupted. So yeah, I'll do my best to deliver this. The pinch hit coming in for Bill. So this is the Q4 KPIs as well as the year-end report. All right. So just a snapshot of the areas of Halifax Transit's work in relation to Regional Council's transportation priority outcomes. So under the Safe and Accessible Transportation Network with accessibility and technology, under interconnected and strategic growth through the service plan, and under the well-maintained transportation network, asset and infrastructure renewal. So the deliverables under that first outcome, Accessibus, continuous service improvement plan, and the fixed route planning, scheduling, and operations software are in progress, but a little behind schedule. And the bus stop accessibility improvement and fare management phase 2 are both in progress. So the Q4 highlights under the technology outcome or deliverable is the procurement of the first phase of the alternative fare payment strategy. So a mobile app is ongoing. So an RFP was posted and the evaluation is ready to proceed following the closure of that. Under interconnected and strategic growth, we have transportation measures or TPMs on Bayers Road, Yonge Street, and Roby. So there's some significant construction last year. Large number of transit lanes implemented, and Bayers Road is still under construction this year. West Bedford Park and Ride, the design was completed last year. The Ragged Lake Transit Center expansion is a little delayed, and there's and the electric bus pilot is in progress. So in terms of West Bedford, there was some stakeholder engagement. The detailed design was completed in Q4, and we're at the stages of finalizing the tender for construction, as well as some of the site preparation was initiated earlier this year. And the Ragged Lake Transit Center expansion, we're also in the final stages of releasing an RFP for the design this summer. And under a well-maintained transportation network is Woodside Ferry Terminal Phase 2 construction. So a couple of images from the progress there. So recently, the 4 new escalators were installed. So the construction started on Phase 2 in October 2020 and is scheduled to wrap up substantial completion in October of this year, with final completion in December of 2021. And once that will be complete, it'll be a comprehensive refresh of the building, so improved passenger facilities, new escalators, stairs, washrooms. So some of the highlights from Q4, boardings and revenue were down significantly from the year previous. System-wide on-time performance increased about 7% from Q4 last year. Departure line received about 1,900 passenger calls, a typical weekday this quarter. Accessibus operated 26% fewer trips this quarter compared to Q4 the previous year, and 97% of customer feedback was resolved within the service standards. A few more on Q4. So the mean distance between failures decreased about 23% from Q4 last year. Mean distance between service calls for conventional service was about 4,300 kilometers, an improvement of 2% from last year. Mean distance between service calls for Accessibus was just over 53,000. Maximum daily number of buses that could not complete their scheduled service due to mechanical defect was 14, while the average was 5.9. And the maintenance cost was about 19% higher than the budgeted cost. So $1.44 or $1.44 per kilometer compared to the budget of $1.25. So in terms of the annual summary, so on-time performance was 88%, so 10% increase over the previous year. And overall boardings decreased about 54% from the previous year, and revenue is down just about 57%. A few more, so Accessibus decreased 48% from last year, but the trips that were not provided decreased almost 98% compared to the previous year. The average price for fuel was 54 cents, 5 cents higher than the budgeted cost. And the mean annual distance between failures for 2021 was just over 9,000, and that declined 7% compared to the previous year. And the maintenance cost per kilometer was consistent with the $1.35 per kilometer as budgeted. So in terms of the cost per passenger, it increased significantly with the decreased ridership across all services due to the pandemic, as well as we had fare collection suspended for between March 18th, 2020 to August 1st, 2020. And just a few more KPIs in terms of the annual summary. So these are measured on an annual basis to track changes in growth, and the bus and ferry figures don't include Accessibus. Scheduled fixed route service hours decreased in 2020-21 due to the service disruptions as a result of the pandemic, and the decrease in ridership was significant, so that results in some of the negative per capita metrics there. And that is it.
Thank you very much, Dave. I do see that we have a question, at least one or two, maybe from Councilor Mancini.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Dave, thanks for the presentation. Thanks for pinch hitting. My question is with regard to the Accessibus program you identified as behind schedule. This is probably the third time that Transit Update has come to this committee, and it's the third time that Accessibus update is behind schedule. Can you explain to us why it's behind schedule still, and when do we expect it to get back on schedule, and when do we expect the completion when it comes to Accessibus?
Thank you. I see we have Dave Riggi chiming in here. Thank you, Dave. A different Dave.
Dave and Dave's brother Dave. And
it was part of the requirement to speak today. You have to be Dave. Is my video and audio coming in okay? My video looks very choppy on my own screen, but am I coming in clearly?
Yeah, your audio is good, Dave.
Perfect. So through the chair, you know, a lot of that does come down to the fact that project lives within our operations group, and of course, for the past 15 months, you know, COVID disrupted a whole lot of that. So that is one part of it. That isn't the only part of it. The other piece is in terms of looking at having a dedicated resource for that, and council may recall that there was a position in our budget within the operations group of a business analyst that has been hired, has been onboarded. They've been with us for about a month or so, and they're really going to be focused on that, along with a few other initiatives, but really able to bring some real focus to it, because we did recognize that was it was becoming a challenge to have our operational staff try to do a project like that while they're keeping the operation running. So that position is in place now. I do hope that we will be able to get that back on track now that we do have that dedicated resource. And part of what they will be doing as well is because that program has existed for a few years now, it's a good opportunity to have someone new come in, look at it, say, here's what we've done, here's what's left, and make sure that, you know, as things have changed, you know, through the pandemic and otherwise, are we still focused on the right areas? So I do expect probably later in this fiscal, we will be back with a more comprehensive update on that program, just again, because it has existed for some time now, and be able to get going on that. I know would have been mentioned in my budget presentation, the two biggest items this year coming through that program are the technology upgrades on the buses that will allow us to change the list of pickups and drop-offs for the drivers in real time, which really does allow us much greater flexibility with last-minute bookings. And then also on the policy side, looking at the eligibility criteria and making sure that that's aligned with you know, reflecting the accessibility of our fixed route fleets and also best practices. So those are the two areas we will be focusing on this year.
Thanks, Dave. Through to you, Madam Chair. I'm wondering, Dave, I understand the pandemic and the dedicated person just joining us and that needs to catch up. Glad to hear that person is going to be dedicated to making this a priority. I do look forward to maybe an update where that project is, hopefully sooner than later, once the new person really has wrapped her arms around this project, so we can have a sense of its status. But thank you, Dave. I appreciate it.
Thank you, Councillor. Another call out to members to ask any questions. If not, I do have a couple. So I'll proceed with that, and if anyone else wants to chime in. So Dave, I want to iterate as well Councillor Mancini's support of and questions around the Accessibus. And when I hear you speak to review, I think you're right on. I think sometimes fresh eyes, fresh ideas, and a new perspective is helpful. Accessibus has gone through some challenges, and I think on a level from a community perspective and a user's perspective, you know, I think there's always room for improvement. One of the things when we look back at the last year and a half is the ridership associated to the pandemic and such. And when you spoke to about what this person might review, and for potential changes, I just want to make sure that I put a shout out for the need for some users ridership engagement on any potential change that might come along. Obviously, many of the riders who use that have potentially vulnerabilities to COVID-19 more so than the average person who may or may not be particularly vulnerable. And I would be cautious to not change it up too much without really checking in with our riders and with our communities on what the needs are now. Sometimes we hope, and we hope we're all going to get back to some semblance of what we had in way of reality. Whether or not that happens over the course of a year or two, we don't know. But at the same time, we don't want to disenfranchise and create barriers without unintended barriers when we're looking at that. So that's just food for thought as you go forward with any potential changes. I do note though that the KPI data that around boardings and revenue, of course, we're over 50+% down. That's significant. And since the year end, are we starting to see a trend up on that now?
Yeah, so prior to the third wave hitting, we had gotten back up as high as 60% of pre-pandemic ridership, which compared across the country, that was quite good, being at 60%. We were quite happy with that. And then of course the third wave hit, we dropped back down again. Right now, I think we're around the 50% mark, give or take. So, it is trending back up. And I think part of what we're going to be doing, especially getting into the fall when you start having students coming back and, I think a lot of people coming back to the offices is really getting out there and, doing promotions to help people feel safe coming back on transit again and encouraging people to use transit again. So there is a certain part of that ridership we will be working to recover. I think having students, the university students coming back in the fall is going to be very helpful for our numbers, of course, because we do carry a lot of students. And also just having some of that demand come back with people coming back to the office. Now, having said that, certainly we're aware and expecting that there is a proportion of people who aren't going to come back to the office, or maybe are only going to come back to the office 3 days a week. So, there will be a chunk of our former ridership that simply isn't traveling anymore, and we can't really capture. And I think that's going to be the reality for transit systems across the country. But something we will be doing is, everything we can to encourage the people who are traveling to come back and use transit again. The service changes in the fall are going to be a great improvement for a lot of people. So that's another draw as well that we can use to promote and try to get people back on the buses and ferries.
Yeah, thank you. And that's what I was just thinking that is worth commenting on is the changes that are coming forward can make a significant difference, because I think we're focusing, particularly on the Dartmouth side, of focusing on getting people to their work locations where they otherwise may not have had that ability. So thank you for that. I appreciate it. I don't see any further questions. Oh, no, I do. Councillor Oathit, would you like to?
Thank you, Chair. And Dave, just quickly sort of following on, it made me think of, you're talking about where we're back to about 50% usage. We're up to 60% till the third wave hit, and that was encouraging. So we are running, presently we are running all routes, or about to go back to full capacity, full schedule for all routes. Yet I saw a notice yesterday or the day before on social media where Transit was warning that some routes were in trouble due to staffing issues or service issues or something. Can you help me understand what's going on? Because from one side, we're hearing that we're only at 50% capacity, yet we seem to be having trouble running the full service. Can you help me figure that out?
Sure, certainly. So through the chair, so we are at 50% roughly of pre-pandemic ridership. Right. In terms of the service disruptions, council may recall there was a briefing memo sent out several months ago during the third wave that due to staffing issues and absenteeism, we were having to pull back some service. We didn't have enough people to run it, basically. So there were a number of trips that we had kind of. So I guess let me back up. Initially, we were doing it kind of ad hoc when we didn't have enough people, and that was making it very difficult for our passengers to know predictably what service was going to be there. So what we did was there were some trips that aren't permanently assigned to a driver that we pulled back when we were at our at the height of the third wave. So at least there'd be some predictability in terms of what trips would not be operating. So we have been gradually putting those back as the absenteeism issues have slowly declined. So we are putting that service back in, but there are still a handful of trips that we haven't put back in yet. We're trying to just be very cautious and not, I guess, not overextend ourselves, because we don't want to get back to a place where we can't offer that predictability, at least of what service is there.
Thank you. Councillor O'Hit, would you like to ask any other questions?
Yeah, yes, thanks. I'm going to turn around just to prove this now. So how do we handle it? Yeah, I'm trying to turn here.
Councillor O'Hit, I think that you're quite broken up. If you would like, you could put your question in the chat and I could ask it on your behalf, because I think you're frozen at this point. I'm hoping you can hear me. I'm not getting anything. Councillor Stoddard, while we wait, did you?
I don't think.
Oh, hello.
Can you hear me now?
I can now. Yeah.
Okay, can you hear me now? So Dave, what do we do in cases like this? Do we have spare boards? Do we have people on reserve? I mean, during the pandemic and whatnot, I understand, and I guess this time of year it's vacations and whatnot, but what are you trying to do to deal with the absenteeism? Because obviously you're trying to get back to full service. Obviously people are heading back to work and we're trying to provide a reliable service for them. Well, what are we trying, what can you do, or what are you doing to deal with the absenteeism?
Yeah, so we do have a spare board and we do have spare operators. And what ends up happening is that, we end up with operators working on their days off, things like that, basically pulling out all the stops to try to get the service out. But, it gets to a point where you have a level of absenteeism where you can't maintain that. You're going to burn people out. You can't keep having them come in. So, certainly we're working with our colleagues in human resources on a few things to try and get people back. I wouldn't necessarily want to go into a lot of detail on some of those internal processes here, but no, we are certainly eagerly working on that to get people back into the workplace through various means, and get back to full service ASAP. Because again, I do think we're going to see ridership increases in September, and then we're also working to staff up for the service increases in November. So we're certainly working towards that quite diligently.
Thanks very much. I appreciate the answer, and thank you, Chair. Sorry for the communication issue.
Oh no, that's quite all right. We're used to it. That was said fondly, but we're all trying to deal with those in different times. Thank you. We'll move the question period over to Councillor Stoddard.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and thank you for this presentation from your staff. I was just noticing fuel costs during the period of COVID. Did your department notice any changes in your budget for fuel? Because I just noticed that when in your presentation there that you were over budget. I was just wondering if the lower gas costs would have affected your budget overall.
Certainly, yeah. So through the chair, so fuel for us is one of those expenses that we do our best working with our colleagues in finance to predict an average fuel rate for the year. The challenge, of course, is that fuel prices, I think, as we all know from our own cars, are highly subject to world markets and everything else. So, what we do is, we do very closely track our fuel consumption through the year, any variations in prices, and we project that out through the budget projection process. So, there certainly, it would be rare for us to be bang on the fuel price every year. But at the same time, there's other things like, the year before COVID, as I recall, our fuel was over budget, but then we also had more fare revenue than expected. So, the transit budget is a large budget, which does allow us to offset various things throughout the year. But we certainly do very, very closely monitor it and project it out, so at least that we know you know, if current fuel trends continue throughout a year, what our a year end would probably look like, and prepare for that.
Okay, yeah, because the reason I mentioned that is because I know for myself, watching the pumps during COVID, the numbers kept going down, and I just wondered if they reflected on transit. Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. And seeing no further questions, we can leave this one under our belts. Thank you, David. So we'll move on now to another presentation under 12.1.2 Strategic Road Safety Plan. See, we have Samantha. Good, there we have you. Thank you. Take it away.
Hi there. Clerks, I think you'll be presenting for me as we were having technical difficulties earlier. You could share the presentation now.
Yes, Samantha, it will be up shortly.
Thank you.
Just while we're waiting, I'll chime in for a moment. I wasn't at the beginning of the meeting, but I want to make sure that we have had the opportunity. If not, I'm sure he'd like to hear it again. Is Brad Anguish with us today?
Yes, he is.
Yeah, so I just want to put a shout out to Brad, and for anyone who might be paying attention, Brad has recently been appointed as traffic authority for HRM, and I just want to congratulate him. We're in the Transportation Standing Committee, and we want to make sure that we acknowledge these milestones. So on behalf of our committee, I want to congratulate you. And wow, you have a lot on your plate, and but I know you have it in you. So we're looking forward to the work that you'll do on that and this traffic. As I think about the traffic safety plan, I just want to say congratulations again.
Madam Chair, it's Tim. I also send him my condolences.
There you go.
Same thing, isn't it?
All right, Samantha.
Congratulations to you too, Brad.
Okay, I think we're ready now.
Still not seeing the correct presentation.
Oh yeah, you're right. Not.
It's showing for me.
We're seeing TSC Q4.
Okay. Oh, sorry. My apologies. I'm going to blame the humidity today. My apologies.
That is a nice picture behind you, though, Becky.
Well, thank you very much. I get to see that every day. There we go.
Oh, yeah. Thank you, Andrea. So good afternoon, Chair and members of the committee. My name is Sam Trask, and I'm the Supervisor of Road Safety and Transportation with Traffic Management, and happy to be here today to present on the Strategic Road Safety Plan 2021 Annual Report. Slide, please. So the Strategic Road Safety Framework was initially adopted in 2018 as HRM's first iteration of a dedicated road safety strategy. Staff have since developed specific evidence-based action items that transition the framework into the Strategic Road Safety Plan, which is focused on reducing fatal and injury collisions on roadways in the Halifax region. The short-term goal of the plan is to reduce fatal and injury collisions by 20% within 5 years, and the long-term vision is to move towards zero fatalities and injuries for all modes of transportation. 2030 by 2038. Slide, please. So the Strategic Road Safety Framework was initially adopted in 2018 as HRM's first iteration of a dedicated road safety strategy. Staff have since developed specific evidence-based action items that transition the framework into the Strategic Road Safety Plan, which is focused on reducing fatal and injury collisions on roadways in the Halifax region. The short-term goal of the plan is to reduce fatal and injury collisions by 20% within 5 years, and the long-term vision is to move towards zero fatalities and injuries for all modes of transportation by 2038. Slide, please. So this annual report presents the first year of evaluating our road safety progress towards the goal. Baseline statistics were developed from an average of 2018 and 2019 annual collision data. Therefore, 2020 is the first year following the years comprising the benchmark stats. In 2020, there were a total of 5 fatal collisions and 607 injury collisions, which had occurred on roadways within the Halifax region, including roadways under provincial jurisdiction. Despite a steady increase in the estimated population, we have seen a reduction in the total number of fatal and injury collisions occurring in the region in 2020. Traffic patterns were also affected by the COVID-19 pandemic during this reporting year, so staff completed an analysis to compare the assumed traffic volume reduction versus the overall reduction in fatal and injury collisions. It was determined that the collision reduction was greater than the traffic volume reduction, both during the 8-month pandemic period and through the overall 2020 calendar year. Therefore, the collision reduction can be attributed to additional factors outside of just the traffic volume patterns. Slide, please. So in summary, fatal and injury collisions in 2020 have exceeded the 20% reduction goal for 2023. However, as COVID-19 restrictions continue to loosen, collision trends may also evolve and could position us differently in the upcoming year. Slide, please. For comparison purposes, public collision data was obtained from a selection of Canadian jurisdictions. This table provides fatal and injury collisions for 2018 and 2019 normalized by 100,000 population. The same data, unfortunately, for 2020 was not yet publicly available at the time of this report. However, this provides valuable insight and shows that the Halifax region is performing relatively well with respect to all fatal and injury collisions. Slide, please. As part of the road safety plan, 7 collision emphasis areas are highlighted to identify the potential for greatest impact on reducing fatal and injury collisions in the region. These emphasis areas are defined as intersections, the young demographic, pedestrians, aggressive driving, distracted driving, impaired driving, and bicyclists. This figure provides 2020 annual fatal and injury collisions compared to the baseline average for each of the emphasis areas. It's important to note that there's crossover between the emphasis areas. For example, a collision could have occurred at an intersection with a young pedestrian as a result of distracted driving. That one collision could be accounted for in multiple emphasis areas. As shown in this chart, fatal and injury collisions have decreased from the baseline average across all 7 emphasis areas. Slide, please. So the evidence-driven actions outlined in the 2020 Strategic Road Safety Plan included engineering, education, and enforcement countermeasures, all aimed to reduce fatal and injury collisions within all of the emphasis areas. Starting with the engineering countermeasures, a significant number of initiatives were completed in the past year. A full list has been included in the report. However, I'd like to highlight some of the key items here. So we did install 15 leading pedestrian intervals, 12 rectangular rapid flashing beacons, 5 accessible pedestrian signals, 13 new speed display signs. We did 30 traffic calming installations and installed 6 40-kilometer-per-hour neighborhoods. There were over 50 intersection improvements as a result of in-service safety reviews of our top 10 signalized intersections with a high frequency of injury collisions. These improvements range from sign and pavement marking changes, street lighting, and new signal equipment. So HRM also partnered with a company called Microtraffic to complete safety reviews at another 10 signalized intersections. The project involved video analytics technology to review near-miss conflicts to proactively identify potential safety issues. Those draft reports have been submitted to staff for initial review, and once received, the final reports will be posted to our website later this summer. And lastly, we completed 4 speed limit reductions that were implemented on major corridors throughout the region. Slide, please. So there's been significant progress towards our public information sharing this past year. The road safety webpage at halifax.ca continues to be updated with educational content and historical road safety reports. We intend to increase information sharing regarding specific road safety projects in the upcoming year. The first iteration of the online road safety dashboard was released this year. This tracks progress towards our road safety goals with updates on targeted and completed measures, as well as key collision data summaries. Another major milestone for us was the public open data release of collision data. This feature provides a geographical representation of collisions with key analysis information. Slide, please. So education efforts in 2020 involved the expansion of the Heads Up Halifax campaign in both scope and scale. The expanded campaign had been designed to not only increase efforts to promote crosswalk safety, but also encompass the broader scope of road safety for all road users and the importance of shared responsibility for road safety, whether someone is walking, driving, rolling, or cycling. There were three main streams of communication that were identified for the 2020 campaign. These were increasing road safety awareness, highlighting municipal road safety initiatives, and engaging citizens. Due to the impacts of COVID-19, the engaging citizens component had been postponed. Ongoing messaging has typically followed the provincial road safety themes where they align with our own emphasis areas. This has included updates made to the road safety website and the road safety dashboard, as well as both organic and paid social media messages highlighting specific safety issues related to those themes. There have also been investments made to print ads, billboards, bus boards, bus shelters, and radio ads, highlighting the municipality's commitment to road safety. Slide, please. Enforcement plays a key role in addressing the behavioral emphasis areas, such as aggressive driving, impaired driving, and distracted driving. Members from HRP and RCMP are active members on the Road Safety Steering Committee and are committed to moving forward the priority of road safety. Traffic enforcement was impacted during the early stages of COVID-19, but it had begun to resume to previous levels during the latter part of 2020. A comparison of 2019 and 2020 summary of offense tickets issued by both HRP and RCMP is included in this table. An interesting stat to highlight is that the stunting tickets had a significant annual increase over the past year during the COVID-19 pandemic. That's 81% and 143% from HRP and RCMP respectively. Slide, please. So the 2021 Strategic Road Safety Plan will continue to build on the success by expanding the data-driven engineering countermeasures to more priority strategic locations and improving the collaboration and focus of the education and targeted enforcement countermeasures. A continuous analysis of the collision database, in-service safety reviews, and intersection assessments have a high potential of preventing fatal and injury collisions. This year's plan involves a significant increase in the number of engineering countermeasures being implemented. And this table shown provides the current fiscal target along with a number of measures already completed this year and a total number of measures installed to date. So 2021 targets include 20 leading pedestrian intervals, 19 RRFBs, 5 accessible pedestrian signals. The existing speed display signs will all be evaluated for their effectiveness and rotated to new locations as required. We have an outstanding number of traffic calm streets at 117 this year for installation. We are looking into 6 40-kilometer-per-hour neighborhoods and 5 additional advanced yield lines to pilot. Slide, please. We're currently sourcing a photo enforcement feasibility analysis. This will consider technologies such as red light cameras and electronic speed enforcement. The microtraffic study that I previously alluded to, the recommendations will be reviewed and prioritized for implementation in short-term and long-term plans. Items may range from quick signage changes to larger intersection improvement projects, which will have to be accounted for in future budgets. We are completing 2 intersection modification projects and modifying the existing RA5 at Dunbrack and Clayton Park and installing a new RA5 on Barrington Street between Yonge and Hanover. Slide, please. For additional focus on pedestrian collisions, We will complete in-service safety reviews of at least the top 5 pedestrian collision locations. We will be reviewing major corridors to identify any gaps in pedestrian crossing control that may be required to support improved network connectivity. Locations identified for additional marked crosswalks will be programmed into future budgets. We also have a future staff report that will outline opportunities and constraints associated with implementing protected left and right turns at signalized intersections. Slide, please. We will conduct speed limit reviews of priority corridors where speed has been identified as a contributing safety concern. The municipality also continues to make improvements to pedestrian and bicycle facilities through the implementation of the IMP, the Active Transportation Priorities Plan, and the Tactical Urbanism Program. Examples of these countermeasures include curb extensions, protected bicycle facilities, multi-use pathways, sidewalks, and tactile walking surface indicators. Moving on to education, the evolution of the next iteration of the online road safety dashboard is currently underway. The next version will improve user access and automatically link to existing data sets to provide more efficient and timely updates of collision data summaries and countermeasures. The Heads Up Halifax campaign will continue to evolve messaging to improve its effectiveness. Feedback gathered from the 2020-21 campaign has led to the adjustment of the campaign tagline to everyone's responsibility, moving away from shared responsibility. Planning for further evolution of the campaign is underway for 21-22. One notable difference for this year's campaign is the inclusion of a video series for social media, highlighting tips for road safety behavior for all road users. Continued investments will be made to print ads, billboards, bus boards, bus shelters, and radio ads, highlighting the municipality's commitment to road safety. Enforcement efforts will continue to target high-risk behaviors determined to be contributing to fatal and injury collisions. Together, Hrp, Rcmp, and the rest of the Road Safety Steering Committee will work towards identifying data-driven enforcement efforts to target higher risk behaviors and locations. Assuming the situation with COVID-19 remains relatively stable in the region, it is expected enforcement efforts will be closer to the pre-COVID levels. Slide, please. And lastly, staff have identified capital budget pressures moving forward. The 21-22 approved road safety capital budget is $3.147 million. This included the $1 million increase to the traffic calming budget that was requested by Regional Council during the annual budget process. Currently, the road safety capital budget approved in principle for 2022-23 sits at $2.52 million. To maintain the improved 21-22 traffic calming funding level, the 22-23 budget will need to be increased. In addition to traffic calming requirements, there is potential for the implementation of a new photo enforcement program, intersection upgrade requirements as a result of the current microtraffic safety project and other intersection safety reviews, and an increased level of ABS installations that will be required to achieve future targets. Based on these pressures, staff will work towards increasing the 2022-23 road safety capital envelope as part of the annual business planning process. Slide, please. And that concludes the presentation, and we're happy to take any questions now. Thank you.
Thank you, Samantha. Appreciate that. So we'll start with questions from Councillor Mancini.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Sam, thank you as always. Thank you for the work you do, especially when it comes to our road safety. I have several questions, and maybe I'll just give you all the questions, and that way the chair doesn't cut me off, and then you can answer them. How's that? In no particular order. Can you explain, and we do have new committee members, new councillors too, the process for requesting speed reductions on streets? And part two of that is, are there any, we made the request to the province to allow the municipality to make those decisions on their own. They said no. Is there any plan for us to be asking that question again, especially since we do have new leadership in the province, and then there is an election now? So that's my first question. You alluded to the Engaging Citizens program was paused because of the pandemic, and when is that coming back on track, and what does that look like? Third question, speed sentries or speed signs. We've changed our policy on how they're used. We used to have them available in our district, and the local community police officer would put them up. Now I understand staff has that, HRM staff has that. Can you explain what the current policy is around those? Some councillors have, as myself and others, have used our own councillor funds that we have access to purchase these speed sentries. And I also like part two of that question. We see that as a role in safety and reducing the speed. I'm not sure if that's considered the same for staff, Sam. So I wouldn't mind hearing from you and your team, your thoughts and benefits, if any, on those speed signs. Big question for me is the Nova Scotia Transportation Safety Act. We keep hearing it's coming this year. This year is almost getting past us. Do we have any indication when that new Transportation Safety Act will showing up? Is it still going to be released in 2021? And for those of you watching at home and some of my newer colleagues, there's a whole bunch of stuff in there. But the things that I'm particularly looking for is the speed radar cameras is one of the things that could be part of that. And my last question, Sam, and this may need a little more clarification, but what is the communication that you do have with Hrp and Rcmp? You alluded to stats that you collect from them to help making your decisions, but we receive as councillors numerous areas of complaints when it comes to speeding, and then we reach out to your team and say, what can we do? And traffic calming and a whole list of items. We try to communicate with our HRP commander or RCMP commander on that. But what's that communication? Do you have a channel that's open? Do you talk on a regular basis? Are there problem areas? What do you do in the problems areas? Or is it a one-time conversation with HRP? And I can clarify that more further, Madam Chair, as Sam gets to the question. So thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you, Sam.
Thanks, Tony.
Thank you. Through Madam Chair to the councillor. I can attempt to address a few of those questions, but I may need to bring in some of my colleagues as well. So for your first question, the process requesting speed reductions on streets. So just to confirm, that would be referring to reduced speed limits such as 40 kilometers per hour under 50.
That is correct.
So,
yes.
Yeah. Okay. So our current process, you were correct. We do have to apply to the province at this time in order to be able to install those signs throughout any of our local streets. We do have a bit of criteria that the province has given us. The streets have to be local in nature. The existing 85th percentile speeds have to be around 40 kilometers per hour. I guess, so we have to put that request through the province before we can make those signage changes ourselves. The way that we have been approaching how we're picking the neighborhoods and the local streets to do that, we have been utilizing a combination of existing speed data that we have collected, looking at areas that would fit that criteria that the province has given us, and also basing it off of our traffic calming request list, because that gives us a good idea of where the concerns are coming from as well from the residents.
Sorry, on that one, sorry, that same one, saying two parts of that. I have an ask. Is it possible that to all councillors, that description that you've given to us can be given to all councillors? Because we do have 7 new councillors and may not be clear on what the process is and how the criteria works. The other part of my question around that was, are there any further talks taking place on requesting from the province yet again that we be giving this responsibility and allowed to do on our own? We made the ask in the past, they've said no. So has there been any further conversation on that? I see Mr. Anguish jumping in on that. And a substitution. Yeah. Substitution, number 14, you're in.
Yeah, it's thank you, Councillor. Look, it's in the forefront of our discussions at all times. It's been the top thing we've been looking for, period, is just the straight up ability to do this ourselves and self-govern under a set of criteria that the province might give us. That is consistent with pretty much the rest of the country, where the provincial government has given them some level of autonomy for municipalities to undertake this work. So, we've heard positive discussions that this is being talked about. Of course, the people that we work with, the staff, they don't call the final shots, and they're very clear to point that out. So that's fair. That discussion, and I'll just answer another question while I'm here, is only been recently just placed in priority by obviously us flagging the need to get the photo enforcement legislation hammered through. As you know, it was crafted, but it's getting a little stale dated. It needs to be proclaimed. We invited, as you know, our photo enforcement RFP, I believe, has just recently been released. Sam, is it gone or is it? Yeah, okay. So we've released it. I will say in the discussions leading up to it, we had the Provincial Traffic Authority attend with us at these sessions, so that the solution that we are looking at, we want to make sure that there'll be no hiccups with the province accepting it, both on how the back end processing occurs in terms of the billing and the tickets, but also in the way the data is collected and the way the technology works, and also with a view that this might be applied elsewhere in the province. So promising things happening on the staff front. Obviously, as I'll always say in any of these meetings, any work that a councillor can do with their MLA to champion these things is extremely helpful. It works. I'll just say that. So,
well, you know what, Brad, thank you for stating that. And I think for my colleagues, especially my newer colleagues, here's an opportune time, right? There is an election going on, I heard. Someone told me that. And to be bringing these things forward as we're discussing today, but particularly this Transportation Safety Act. I mean, we need this yesterday, right? So we can move on to our work. So thank you for that, Brad.
So I'll jump back into your third question, Councillor, regarding the speed display signs. So our current process with that, we've started collecting an assessment list. So we're starting to keep track of all the requests that do come into our office for those speed display signs. So going through the assessment process to prioritize those based on speeding, evidence-based speed locations with potential collisions happening at those locations as well. So prioritizing through that list for future installations. We will be taking an approach of doing twice annual installation periods. So in the spring and the fall, rather than trying to go out every week to install these almost 20 signs that we have in our possession now. So it will be more on a scheduled basis that we would be installing those signs. And in between those installation periods, we'll be doing our evaluations of the existing signs, how they are performing. Are they getting the impact to driver speeds that we want? And if not, then at that time, that location would be identified for a relocation in the future. You did mention as well that we are trying to collaborate with Hrp and Rcmp to work with them in getting their signs so that we can have more of a collaborative approach of where we are installing signs, and to help with the enforcement side of that, we're offering to provide some data to Hrp and Rcmp so that they can determine if there is a speeding issue. They can put their enforcement efforts in that place if needed, rather than installing those speed display signs to determine if there is a speeding issue, in fact.
If I may, Madam Chair, on these signs, the frustration that we have as councillors, I have to be careful to speak for all my colleagues, but what I hear from them, including myself, is we get the complaints, as you know, and solutions to many of the complaints take time. I understand that. There's a process, there's resources and all of that. By being able to utilize these speed signs and get data from it, it helps us to show response, hopefully quickly, to our residents, but at the same time, that data collection, very often we'll have complaints of a street, and the officer that works that area will say, look, there's no speeding in that street. The challenge is 50 kilometers too fast for that street, right? And so the speed sentry helps us to have that communication with the with the residents. So I think you know that, Sam, but I just share with you that it's a frustration, and I understand there's only so many resources, and the fact that you're going to do it twice a year, at least we know that, and that's hope I ask that be clearly communicated with our council colleagues, and that you have 20 signs. You know, many of my colleagues would be willing to add more signs to your inventory if that is a value. And I guess that's part of my question is, do you feel, your department feel that these signs do serve a purpose and are a value? And would you entertain receiving more of them, and more of the colleagues willing to share the funds they have available?
We're just going through the evaluation process right now to determine the existing signs that have been installed within the past 6 months to a year, what impact they're actually having. So we should be able to have a better understanding of how they are performing. Potentially they're performing well over the first few weeks, few months, but then maybe after 3 to 6 months, results are going right back up to the original speeds. So that's yet to be determined. Resourcing would also be another factor to consider with, you know, if we do double our sign inventory, what does that mean to go out and do evaluations of all the existing signs, collecting all the speed data with that, and then also having our operations staff go out to do the installations, removals, also the upkeeping of the maintenance for the signs. That's another big thing right now too.
Okay, thank you. Just when you consider that evaluation, consider that increasing and all those things. Thank you.
Yep. And the last question that I can answer is in regards to our communications with HRP and Rcmp. So we definitely have open communication there between staff at traffic management and police departments. So I've got regular contact between our road safety steering committee members that sit on that committee from HRP and Rcmp. Also, if there's any specific issues that do come up, for example, if we do collect speed on a certain street and we notice that, well, there's an issue here, we would forward that on to enforcement for their review and action at that time. We wouldn't wait, you know, until we can get a speed display sign out or anything like that. We would send that notification through to them.
Is there an issue of sharing data? You alluded to in your presentation about sharing data, but I've also heard that HRP, and particularly, I don't know about Rcmp, are reluctant to share data. Do you have any, is that true? Do you know, or does anybody know, is there a challenge with getting data from HRP?
In the past, we have, I guess, had an informal approach to how we do share that data. If we're aware that HRP has collected speed data at a certain location, we can request that, and there have been no issues with that information sharing on our part. In addition, I will bring forward that HRM has opened up our traffic count data to internal GIS, so that can be shared with HRP. And also that's been released to the public open data as well. And its initial format, there's still some changes to be made to that in the future, but that also helps with Rcmp accessing our data as well.
I see Brad, did you want to comment, Brad?
Yeah, the chief and I are scheduled to meet. Data sharing is one of those things, but it was more around, there may be talk around there about right after motor vehicle accidents. This is where we seem to have the most, I guess, that's the highest demand. And of course, the police have to carry out their investigations and their work. And of course, as you can imagine, there's a lot of pressure on us right away on the engineering side to start to react or move. And so there is that period of time while the police is wrapping their work where we're, you know, awaiting that critical information that we need to undertake our work. And I know that has been, that can be a lengthy period at times. And, you know, that may be part of what you're hearing. I'm not sure, but we are working. I know Sam does a very good job working with them to get her hands on the motor vehicle accident data immediately, so that, or as soon as we can, so that we can start to undertake our work to make sure there is nothing wrong. But I will say that, for instance, during any accident at for instance, an intersection, regardless of the police investigation, we will go out, you know, rapidly within a business day and get out to the intersection to make sure that sight lines are correct, that, you know, that everything was working the way it should have, so that, you know, there's no chance that, you know, of a repetition if it was an engineering fault. So I throw that out there. That is an area where we feel a lot of pressure coming from the community, especially in the high profile incidents.
Thank you.
Councillor Menzies, I think I'm going to suggest that you come back if you have some more questions and offer the floor to.
I just had my last question that I already asked about engaging citizens. Once that back on track again, because it was there was a pause because of COVID. I had already asked that question, so I'm wondering if you can answer that.
That's fair.
Thank you.
And it's Brett Murphy here. I hope you can hear me. It seems like my screen may be frozen, so I thought I'll check.
No, you're good.
Okay.
Looking handsome today.
Oh, thank you very much. So Brett Murphy here. I'm the Managing Director of Corporate Communications and a member of the Road Safety Steering Committee. And on the engagement, as was noted in the report, there's a couple reasons for the pause. And to clarify the distinction, that was a pause on more in-person engagement due to COVID, and also just a reassessment of how we can improve engagement with our residents. So we're in the process now of finalizing our communications plan for this fiscal with our business unit client, TPW, which will then be shared with the Road Safety Steering Committee for endorsement. We're kind of 99% there. But in terms of the engagement per se, the good news is that engagement has been ongoing through our online channels, most predominantly social media. But we recognize that that's not sufficient. There's other components of this. So we're looking at revisiting with the public health measures in mind, a community-based event in the fall when the students come back to school. In the past, we had something along the lines of a crosswalk safety initiative. So we're going to be planning for something. It may not look like that, but have the same objective of getting face-to-face with the residents and having hopefully participation of councillors and the mayor. But we'll give you plenty of lead time for that. And then in terms of other engagement efforts, definitely having conversations about how we can expand the opportunity for engagement with stakeholders. The opportunity, I know there's a desire by a number of folks, whether they be special interest groups or individuals, who want to have a voice in this. And so myself and members of the Road Safety Steering Committee, particularly Brad and others, will take a look at some opportunities there. So I hope that helps address your question.
Yep. Thank you. Thank you, Madam Chair. Appreciate it. Thank you, Sam.
Thank you, Councillor. So call upon Councillor O'Hit next.
Thank you, Chair. And Tony did ask a number of great questions and a couple that I had. So thank you. And thank you to Sam and Brad for answering them. I also want to say thanks to all Brad's team and Sam and her team. They do very frequently receive questions from me and from residents. They get back to us quickly with thorough answers and try and educate both councillors and the resident on what happens, what can't happen, what can happen, and when and why, and that's always appreciated. And most people understand, most people appreciate receiving good information. And I'm very pleased with how we, as a council, gave the extra $1 million for calming, and it seems like that Brad and team are really, and you, Sam, are really determined on using that to knock down the list, both with specific projects as well as integrating them with paving. So that's good. I've mentioned a few times to Brad now, and I'll mention it again, that I am concerned that the TSC will be proclaimed one of these days. We'll be told we're allowed to use photo radar and red light cameras, and we won't be ready. And the province will give us a week to a month's notice or something that the authorization is coming, the approval is coming. And then we've been blaming the province now for as long as I've been on council, and they're going to turn around and say, okay, well, HRM, you now have permission. Where are the red light cameras? Where is the photo radar? Where are the monitors for monitoring the decibels on the mufflers and this sort of thing? So I think I won't tell you what to do, Brad. I never would think of doing that. But if you were to come forward sometime soon saying you're going to need some money to buy some of this hardware, and hopefully portable hardware to some extent that will be able to be moved around. I think that you would find council somewhat receptive to that, certainly this councillor, because it's something we've been promising a long time. And frankly, I'm getting tired of every summer having to tell people, well, when the TSA is passed, yes, we'll be able to look at muffler noise. And yes, that the one that nobody stops on the Dartmouth Road, the traffic lights, is probably a good location for either photo radar or red light camera and this sort of thing. So, you know, at the risk of sounding like Councillor Walker in the past, you know, be careful what we wish for because we got to be ready when it arrives. So I think you know that. One of the things that throws me for a loop, and Brad, I've been in meetings with you on this, and I know that you've made the good old college try and will continue to do to try and get the speed limit reduced to 40 as the default speed limit reduced to 40 in our residential areas. Because what we're doing right now is frankly beyond foolish. That we have to do it neighborhood by neighborhood, street by street, submit requests, etc., to streets that all over this country and all over North America are being reduced to 30 and 40. Or the equivalent of 30 and 40 for safety reasons, and to give police more flexibility. Because Tony was quite right when he says that there's lots of streets that, you know, they're driving too fast for conditions rather than enough to warrant a ticket, an enforceable ticket. I don't understand where I get a little offside, and I'm going to look for a little help from Sam and Brad here, is I'll look at an example of West Bedford, and I'll look at my own neighborhood, Ridgevale. There's a street in Ridgevale that qualifies for street calming, traffic speed calming. It's on the list. I think before we started knocking off a bunch this year, it was 97th on the list. West Bedford, there are some streets that are in the 200th, 210th position, whatnot. My point of mentioning these is there's demonstrated that there must be a speeding problem or they wouldn't be on the list to receive speed calming. So the test was done, they met the criteria, not as high as some of the streets between 1 and 10, not as bad a problem as the ones over 300. I don't understand why we can't make faster progress than with the reducing the 40. My neighborhood has one way in and one way out, arguably. There's a sign there that says 50. There is a street that's approved for traffic calming on the list. Why can't we add that without, and I'm worried we do sometimes some paralysis by analysis, and I know you have to justify things and we can't just have signs and crosswalks and stop signs and everything everywhere. But why is it taking so long to go into little neighborhoods like mine or West Bedford when there is identified problem? There are not a whole lot of streets in and out. Why can't we go in more than 6 neighborhoods a year and start putting up the 40-kilometer restrictions in there? I'm worried that, and I know you have to have some justification, but the justification in my mind is already done if they're on the list for calming. So help me understand why we can't address the reduction to 40 a little faster than 6 per year or whatever neighborhoods.
Sam, did you want to start that, or you want me to come in at them? I'll try at the macro level, and there's a volume issue. So first of all, the province requires all the data collection. As Sam said, we got to get 85th percentile speeds for all those areas, and that requires data collection. And of course, COVID didn't help because in order to make budget cuts, we had to cut our data collection capability. So we lost some time. We're trying desperately to make that up. That is the biggest thing. Then there's how much, obviously, we can produce and get ready for a submission and then push through to the province. And then the province to get back to us. And then obviously our capability of then getting out and getting all the signs up. I see Roddy's popped up as well. So I'll start as that as the introduction. And I'll turn over to Roddy, and then we'll continue to work this answer as a team to try and get the full picture for you.
Thank you.
Thanks, Brad. Through you, Madam Chair, to the councillors, Roddy McIntyre, I'm Senior Traffic Operations Engineer with Traffic Management. To try to address the councillor's question, further to what Brad had mentioned, there are various factors that kind of not hold us back, but that we need to consider when we're moving on this. And sure, we can submit the asks to the province and get the data back when we do our data collection. It then comes back to capacity to get the signage out and installed. Because of the situation we're in, where we can't just use the default de facto speed limit, which is what we would prefer because it makes it extremely easy to implement. Moving on it the way we're required to with the province, in order for it to be legal and enforceable, each street needs to have a sign on it. Because if I say just post at the entrance, even if it's an enclosed subdivision with one road in, but if it has 5 roads once you get in there, if I only post on the road in, once a vehicle turns off that street, now by default, that other street is 50. So now we've got to post on that street. And sometimes we have the benefit of a utility pole, makes it easy to get it up, get the sign up. Other times we don't have that infrastructure in place. We then need to install posts. You know, that all takes time. We've got a limited number of staff resources, and if I'm sure you can appreciate now, especially with the expansion of the traffic calming program, those staff are now also tasked with installing all the signs for the speed tables and the traffic calming, and it boils down to our capacity right now to be able to produce the signs and install the infrastructure needed to get them in place so that we can actually make use of them if we need to enforce the speed. Because if we're in the absence of the signage, the police can't write a ticket without the risk of it being thrown out.
All right. And that does make sense with my own neighborhood. And so there's some streets off Ridgevale, and there's the main Ridgevale Drive, which has the 50 sign on it. So we would have to put 8 signs in that neighborhood. To me, that is not a big cost item. And if Ridgevale has already demonstrated that there is a speed issue on one of the streets, I think that identifies there's a problem. So I guess my question, Roddy, is, and I'm really not trying to be difficult, I'm really just trying to understand that we may not have the 8 signs, we may not have the people that can put the 8 signs up, you know, right away. And you've explained that to me, and a number of things we're working on, and I completely understand that. But there is nothing that keeps you from applying for my neighborhood, for example, to the province, and then when the resources, the person with the wrench and the 7 signs or 8 signs appeared, they could be ready to go. What keeps us only applying for the 6 or 8 or 10 neighborhoods a year instead of saying, okay, here are all the areas we have a demonstrated problem. Here's the number of signs we would need. Let's try and knock these off over the next couple of years as resources, and certainly you'll have to come to us if you need more people, you need more signs, you know, whatever. But why are we not sending those in for approval and saying, okay, Ridge, as soon as we have 7 signs, the person available to put them up, you're approved, you're ready to go. What am I missing?
Through you, Madam Chair, to the councillor. Thank you, councillor, for the question. At the end of the day, when we first started down this path with the 40-kilometer-per-hour neighborhoods, it was essentially based on what we felt we would be able to accomplish if we said we can actually get this done. At this point, I guess there is nothing stopping us from, if we have the data and to make the application. What that unfortunately does is then just creates another list. So you've got streets that are on the traffic calming list that are backlogged, and then so now we move them over to the 40-kilometer-per-hour neighborhood list that could be a backlog. And again, we can certainly do that. It may make sense to put a bunch of packages together and have them in and approved, and then we pick away as we're able to. We could certainly look at that as an option.
Thank you, Roddy. Did you want to add anything to Councillor Outhead's questions, Samantha, before I move on?
No, thank you. I think they've covered everything.
Okay, thank you.
I might.
Sure, just very quickly, I like the idea of this list. I like the idea of the list as it described, because then, Brad, what this does to you, I think, is then allows you to come to us like you did with traffic calming and say, here's a list of 48 neighborhoods. And if you gave us a person and you gave us some money for signs, council, we might be able to knock this off the list the way we gave you some money to knock some off the 300 approved for street calming. So I'm not trying to be critical. I'm trying to show you maybe, you know, build this list. show us that it's approved, show us you need a person and some signs, and then let us come up with the money for you. Anyway, that's my rant for today, and thank you all very much for entertaining it.
Yeah, no, Council, those are fair comments. Look, we'll endeavor to kind of shoot out to the macro level to give council a sense of the size of the package, like we did with traffic calming, you know, where we gave you a total number of streets, a total cost, and a number of years it would take to implement. And that was good because it really helped council understand the magnitude of the project. And so we'll do that on the 40-kilometer-an-hour signs. And quite frankly, we probably should have by now. It's an issue of just time and hands to do the work, but we'll endeavor to get a macro picture for you so you can see it. So for instance, Hamilton, Ontario, the province of Ontario gave gave their municipalities the ability to do this. They still have to sign their neighborhoods. But for instance, they went out and figured out how many neighborhoods it was, how many signs, and then plotted a course and advised their council, you know, it'd be about, I think their number was 5 years to try to get it all done. I can't recall if they were trying to I think they had to contract it to make that date. So we can certainly put together a similar package. The other thing I want to draw here is we're trying to get maximum spread in our strategy. So by that, I mean, if we've got a community that's looking at speed humps imminently, let's say within the next couple of years, then what we wouldn't do is then double up on the 40-kilometer, because it's kind of, you know, we're going to try and spread this around to get maximum reach. So we've kind of reached that point in the strategy where now we're getting a sense of how aggressive council wants to be on traffic calming. I mean, let's face it, before last year, we were doing about 13 streets. Now we're going to do about 100 and some odd, right? So the field is moving on us quickly in government speak, but we're keeping up. It's just we're trying to make sure that we're getting that maximum spread out there. So I think that's part what we missed in the answer is we're trying to make sure that, you know, every spot in the municipality needs help is getting help in some form, whether it be a speed display sign, whether it be a speed hump, whether it be 40 kilometers. We're going for maximum impact here. So that is part of the strategy, but it's hard to explain, right? Because the field is moving on us so fast. But so we no sooner get a set of no sooner get a criteria in place and it changes.
Yeah, this makes sense to me, and I really appreciate your situation and the explanation. Thank you.
Thank you. I see no other members and committee councillors who would like to ask questions. I'm going to take advantage of this moment to ask mine and to make some comments. So, Brad, I'm sorry. I'm glad that I can start with the acknowledgement that you are addressing and moving forward with that momentum that council has created, which is a priority in this area. There is not a day that doesn't go by that I don't have traffic. I just got a text from one of the provincial candidates who said every door is about speeding and safety on the roads. And that makes sense to me. And you've heard me speak to that before. I still think it should be listed on our priorities, but in reality, it really is. So I'm grateful for you and your team for the work that you're doing. Specifically to the presentation today, and I appreciate the questions that the other councillors have offered, because they've addressed a few, but so I'm going to throw out a few. So the traffic calming that we have budgeted for this year, including the 1 million, that is a lofty goal, and that's a lot of work that staff have to do. Can you give me a sense of how we're managing on progress on being able to accommodate that? Of course, we're halfway through the season of installation on a lot of these things, and you would know better than I do about running out of the time and the time in the season to actually accommodate this. I know that some, for instance, last year in the Portland Hills area was, I don't know, remember what the reason was, but some of it was pushed into this year. So then that kind of some of those other projects didn't get started until. But you got lofty goals. So if I could just have an update on that, that would be helpful. Stunting tickets, it's encouraging, I think, that we have the tickets, but is it encouraging, or how can we reflect on the reality of, are the stunting tickets an indicator of we're doing a better job catching them doing it and ticketing them, or is it the reality that more people are engaging in this kind of behavior and unsafe situation? Because I can tell you right now, and in fact, I just sent a note off to our RCMP, I said, we need to talk. The stunting complaints that I'm getting on what used to be on the larger, bigger roadways are now on the more local neighborhood roadways, and it's becoming quite alarming. So I'm a little worried that are we really making progress, or are we, you know what I mean? So I'll leave that with you. I am interested in knowing more about what your top 5 pedestrian collision locations are. I don't know if you're able to release that at this stage. As you know, Portland Street has been problematic, certainly in District 3, sad and fatal collision this year and last year and a number of years ago. And so I'm just curious, from your perspective and from the data, what are those top 5 areas? I'm really glad to hear you, and I support as well Councillor Oudhit's suggestion that, you know, if we're looking at, if you as a department need to be able to respond to our concerns as councillor that we're projecting onto you, which is this is a problem and we're behind you, you need to come for more money, then give us the chance to say yes or no without hesitation, because we're not, you know, those councillors that are on this committee, I think, are speaking to the issues that all the councillors are facing. So the 2022-23 additional funding that you're in need of, I do look forward to having that conversation. I'm glad that you see that we can do better, and there's ways to do better. Often when I talk about speeding in traffic, it's a dilemma when you're talking to residents and or media or really anybody who's engaged with the responsibility. The facts are the responsibility is everyone's here. We as a government, we as a transportation road structure providers, we have a role, but as do our communities in advocating for speeding to change, as do our residents in their neighborhoods speaking to each other, and the importance of that full-fledged approach is important. But what we can do here as a municipality is important. So I'm behind you on that, and I look forward to that. I wonder as well, and this is likely to be you, Brad, if you could comment to me on remind me of what the current priorities are for what roads would potentially qualify for traffic calming and those that wouldn't, because it seems to me we have roads for instance, in District 3, and no doubt in other districts, that I guess they're too much of a priority to accommodate some of the traffic calming measures. Baker Drive, for instance, not going to I don't think that's going to qualify for speed humps and speed bumps, speed humps, and all the other things. But what can we do? Has anyone given any thought to some of those larger connector roads that otherwise we're being told, well, that doesn't fit within the traffic calming framework, but yet they're experiencing that kind of dangerous speeding and dangerous driving behavior. So I'll leave it there. I feel like there might have been one more, but I'll leave it there.
Great. Good questions. I'm going to call on my colleagues from time to time for the details, but let me go across the top of all of these answers first. So traffic calming, you talked about progress. To tell you how serious we're taking it was really our actions yesterday at Audit and Finance. We're seeing about a 20 to 30% increase in our construction costs, which is very unfortunate. This is a combination of factors. It's pretty much industry-wide. I checked with the province, same experience. Checked with the Construction Association of Nova Scotia, same experience. So we're starting to see what other people have seen. This is a problem. However, what we did, typically we would push our program to the right, top up the budget, and then jump to it next year, like the example you gave. What we're not doing is, because of the severity of the need and the priority, the need that's been expressed by council. We went to Audit and Finance yesterday. They've passed, they pushed us on to council for a $600,000 top up to continue the program. So long-winded answer to say, financially, we believe we now have all the funds to tender the full program as council wanted and as asked for, well, be it was near the end of the budget process, we're hopping to get this done. Now, I have every faith there will be some streets that just may not be able to get done. Then you have always the traffic calming program that's done through our integrated packages, and those streets, and that's where we're doing a street rehabilitation, those streets can get hung up for reasons beyond our control. So let's say it's a street where we're doing a rehabilitation that involves Halifax Water getting in there at the same time. If Halifax Water is not ready to go, that could cause us to push that project to the right. So sometimes you see traffic calming move for those reasons. But by and large, we seem to be in great shape now financially. Now it's about tendering. And I guess if Samantha or Roddy wanted to comment on the progress, but from what I've seen, even when we started to run out of money, the team started to break down the tendering packages to make sure enough of this was out the door and hitting the streets. For instance, I know the school package is already out the door to do the school. We want all those in before the beginning of the school year if we can. Stunting. Well, that's an interesting one, and I believe the real question is that here to stay here in our region? It's certainly a COVID phenomenon that really brought it on strong here because the streets were empty. That's what encouraged the behavior. And the ticketing shows that we had a good, strong response to this. This was also, throughout the country a problem. Now I think what we're seeing, and you probably see it, well, the speeding inside of the neighborhoods is just purely unexplainable, completely reckless and irresponsible. It's just, the question is, that's what we're so concerned about, is because is that behavior now here to stay? This was, well, we had it before, we didn't have it as much as we have now. So the question is something new, a new volume of activity now here? And the videos that citizens are capturing are just outrageous. We used to have pockets of this activity, but now it seems to have moved out of areas such as parks and parking lots and areas like that into the main neighborhoods. And that's a significant problem for the police. And we're working with them to try and understand how to disrupt the behavior through engineering means. I have a couple of examples at my fingertips, but I'm not going to, we're still working on our exercise of disruption. But I can tell you the speeding and the known speeding areas, we are trying to figure out where they are fast enough to be able to disrupt them. So I am concerned this is a behavior that might be here to stay in a higher volume than we had it before. In terms of the top five, I'm going to defer to Sam or to Roddy I'll defer to Sam to just give you a feel for that discussion. The traffic calming, yes, there are areas that don't qualify under the policy. For example, arterials and major collectors can't, and really bus routes. Although we are making inroads with transit on that. The team has been working on different designs with both the fire department and transit to see if we can't get some quicker results that might involve a little bit of vertical deflection. But the bottom line is, yeah, we don't put them on those roads, but that is why we're going hard after the photo enforcement package. That's where we want to make the gains. That's quite frankly where the majority of the intersections are with the traffic lights. So red light cameras and photo enforcement, that's where we're going to try to really recover on that, where the speeding is. And you talked about, thank you very much for your pledge for support for staff. I have to always tell my team that the days of old are gone, and that in TPW that they're welcome at council, and council's ready to invest. And it is a bit of a shift for the good folks in TPW, and I'm proud to be a part of it. And so we certainly got a few more people added to our ranks in 21-22. Thank you. However, as you've probably heard and started to feel yourself, there's a large staff turnover starting to happen. There's a labor shortage starting to hit this area, and it is affecting HRM. So at times it seems like we're fighting a bit of a battle to just hold ground, because at the time we're adding positions, we're also losing staff. So that said, we're working fast to hire quickly and stay up. So thank you, and you can be sure we'll be bringing a robust financial package back to council. I'll defer then to Sam if she can dig into the top 5, or if it's Roddy. I'm not sure who's going to grab that one.
Yep, I can take that, Brad. Thank you. And just jumping back a little bit further to confirm our progress with the traffic calming project for this year, I can confirm as of this point, there are no projects currently at risk that would be delayed into the next capital year. Obviously, things always come up with construction, especially those integration projects that Brad alluded to. So we'll definitely keep an eye on that as we move forward. In regards to the top 5 pedestrian collision locations, so this was a new initiative that we recently just shifted focus to. Initially, throughout this year, we were looking to review, again, another package of the 10 highest collision frequency locations strictly at signalized intersections. However, now we're committing to focusing that just shifting that focus, towards some of these higher pedestrian collision locations rather than strictly the intersection locations. So we will be reviewing the data in the weeks to come to figure out exactly where those locations are. My assumption is that we may have already looked at some of these intersections and locations throughout previous in-service safety reviews, but that data will still be to come. And throughout my presentation, I did allude to the fact that we're hoping to increase some of our information sharing on the public website, halifax.ca/road safety, and including some of our project updates, including things like the 5 pedestrian collision locations that we would be working on throughout the year.
Thank you. I see that Councillor Stoddard, you're looking for a question. If I could just to follow up on that, because I'm on that vein, I just want to have a little understanding of the Portland Street functional plan. So there's a recognition that we have issues there on that transportation corridor, whether it be cycling, pedestrian, or traffic or transit, and that is part of the whole review. So should that, let's say one of those intersections lands in that list as a priority, which I'm hopeful, but if they did, Brad, this might be a question that would be for you because it's very macro. From a budgeting perspective, that transportation plan would unfold, and there would be likely capital investment that's going to have to happen, and some potential change to intersections and such. Would that trump the potential traffic considerations that might happen in that list? Because that, for instance, Portland Street, now I know Councillor Cuddle is undergoing some further along advanced in their the transportation functional plan for that area. I guess, are they competing interests around that kind of change, or are they considered in whose envelope, what envelope, budget envelope would they land? Do you know what I mean? I feel like I'm getting a little off track on how to express this, but I see them both coming potentially to the same place, and I don't want one budget to sort of steal from another.
Okay. Yeah, no, look, that's fair. That's fair. And actually that speaks to your experience with municipal budgeting. So we believe we've got that pretty much taken care of. So the first thing I want to make sure that you understand, just because we're doing corridor work and we know that work's out there somewhere, might be within near the end of the 5-year plan or within that next tranche of 6 to 10 years. When it comes to road safety, we're not going to hold off on the, if you will, the micro measures. If there's quick fixes that can be done to improve road safety, short of, redesigning the road and redesigning the intersection, we're going to do it. So for instance, I was just rapidly searching. One of your residents has been very concerned about the curb geometry at I can't remember what intersection on Portland. I can tell you that that is going to be fixed. We are going to fix, I think, 2 corners of that intersection. So there's an example of, we're not going to put off something that is a safety need now just because we're going to fix, we know we're going to fix this in a big way sometime in the future. Another great example. What's that?
Eisner Drive, maybe?
I think so. I'll get back to you afterwards. Yeah, okay. I'm pretty sure it is. We had a little bit of a handoff issue as to which of our service providers was going to do that, but I think we've got that sorted out. And so, you know, Sam is great at keeping us on track and making sure that, you know, somebody's got this. Because as you alluded to, I have a number of budgets and a number of ways of approaching these problems. So I just want to assure you, we're not going to, just because there's a major project planned. Another great example is Main Street. You know, those of you who know Main Street outbound and the sidewalks along Ferrybrook. I mean, Main Street is due for an upgrade, but the sidewalks are deplorable. They're absolutely a safety hazard. We're going to go in and patch them up, you know, and it won't be a major piece of work, but we've got to make them safe. So that will occur. And sorry, now I've got myself off track. Was there another bit in there, or
No,
that was it?
That was great, and I appreciate it, Brad. I think that's one of the leadership skills that I think you bring to the table with your team, and you create your team, is that practical approach to the realities that we're facing. So Councillor Stoddard, it's your turn.
Hi, Brad. Congratulations again. You're welcome. St. Margaret's Bay Road, it's become a speed trap. I think we talked about it before. People coming off the 10, oh gosh, my mind just went blank. Coming off the 103, taking that earlier route through Beachville to come down St. Margaret's Bay, taking that exit rather than the Timberley Parkway, because they know at especially rush hour it's lined up. So is there anything we can do on St. Margaret's Bay Road? I know it only has 2 sets of lights. It's not an arterial road. It's not a side street. So, you know, I get complaints about that all the time, but I really don't know what to tell them, because, you know, I'm just wondering if you have anything on that.
Yeah, I hear you. I'm very familiar with that. That's my old neighborhood. I used to take that road every day to go to my home in Governor's Lake, Governor's Lake Drive. So, and I miss it. I love that place. Listen, can I, at the risk of I need to just talk with my team. I'd rather not play this one out live for you. Let us haul that away. You're posing a very good question. I mean, my quick answer is it doesn't qualify for traffic calming, but that's not helping me much. I know you're looking for something else. So I think the best thing for us to do is let us take that away and see what we might be able to come up with there, if that's fair.
Okay, thank you. That's great. Thank you very much.
Okay.
Thank you, Councillor. I don't see anything further or requests to ask any questions or clarification or comments. Again, I'll just reiterate on behalf of all the members, thank you all so much for the hard work and dedication that you are doing. It's greatly appreciated. And from my District 3, I can speak from the residents. Thank you. I think it's going to be an ever-changing situation that we're always going to be adjusting to. You know, I was looking at the goals of 0 collisions, and I think it was for 2023. I can only dream of that day. But you know what, we're trying, and that's, our hearts are in the right place and our energies are in the right place. So thank you both all for this presentation. We're going to move forward now on to the rest of the agenda, which is fairly light. We have no active transportation advisory committee submissions, nothing coming from the any members of the committee, no motions on record, no in camera, no added items, no notice of motion, no public hearings. But we do have a date for our next meeting. We're looking at August 26, 2021 at 1 p.m. is the date of the next meeting. And unless any other councillors have anything to close out with, I just need a motion of adjournment, and thank you all for attending today.
I just had one comment in connection with Brad and his team, I just wanted to say thank you, because whenever I email or call, they are on it. You know, again, if they don't have an answer, they'll get back to me, and it's just amazing, because sometimes I get emails like late at night, and it's like, you know, who's looking at emails after 8 o'clock or on a Sunday? And it's just like, I just want to let you know that I really appreciate your team and the efficiency that they have. And I always wanted to thank them, because they amaze me, really.
Yeah.
So thank you again.
Great, thanks, Iona. Okay, still, I just need a motion for adjournment, and I hope that you all have a great day, and only a day away from weekend. Yeah. Anyone want to move to adjourn?